Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Jay vs. Horror and another episode of Hardcore Horror Reviews. Today, we're switching things up. Now, originally, I was going to talk about the four American guinea pig films, but I'm still in the middle of rewatches with that. I just rewatched Sacrifice last night, and I've seen the other three a couple times, but I want to go back and rewatch them all if we're going to do like a retrospective thing. So I thought we'd talk about something a little bit different today. And the film we're going to be talking about is a 2009 Serbian horror film titled The Life and Death of a Porno Gang. That's right, it's a Serbian horror film, but it's not a Serbian film, if you follow my drift. This film follows a group of traveling sex show performers and pornographic filmmakers who are lured into making snuff films. And I'm just going to say, for the record, guys, this film has been out for a long time. I've seen it different places, and I had never watched it until just recently, a few days ago, because it just looked really bad. It looked really cheesy, and it didn't, it didn't even register with me that it might be an actual film. I just assumed it was kind of like mainly a porno film, right? But I am glad I watched it. I think the film is very good. It's not as extreme as a Serbian film, but it is extreme in its own right. And I think this one has more of a story that's relatable. I mean, it's not relatable. Don't get me wrong, but you're able to connect with these characters a little bit more. And the story is dark and sad, and sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's uh, I hate to say touching, but yes, it is. It's sometimes touching, and yes, and sometimes it is extremely shocking and horrific. But let's talk about the film a little bit. We have Marco here, who's played by Mihaljo Janovic. Yeah, this is going to be fun, right? Serbian names, Eastern European names are always fun. Uh, but yeah, he's an unsuccessful director who begins filming with a guy named Kane. What happens is, he's kind of a spoiled rich kid, is what it sounds like. And he, kind of wants to be a filmmaker. His family doesn't understand him, so he shirks them off and goes to live by himself in the city of Belgrade. And while he's there, he's approached by a porn director, named Kane, played here by Sarjan Militic. And this guy wants him to make porn movies. He's like, look, you can make money doing porn movies until you can save up enough money to make the film you want to make. And so he agrees to do this. But things kind of go off the rails pretty quick when Marco decides to take Kane's money and shoot his own film. Okay, he wants to do this art film that's completely almost moronic. I'd actually almost like to see the film that he made. It's about a farmer who gets some bad soybean seeds, and when his crop doesn't grow, he decides to inseminate the land. I'll put it like that, and this causes some weird marijuana plants to grow. And a local drug dealer sees these plants and stops, buys them, and he starts selling it to his junkie friends or whatever. I hate to say junkie. We're talking about something that's supposed to be weed, right? But that's what they turn into, because after they smoke this stuff, they turn into like weird zombies and stuff. So that movie almost sounds like something I would watch, right? But it looks terrible. And when the guy Kane sees what he's done with his money, he's pretty furious about it. And so Marco promises that he'll get his money back, but really what he decides to do is get together this gang of porn actors and filmmakers and go on the road. He thinks that if they go out and do these live porn shows, they call it porn theater, and they're going to do this on the road, go from town to town, do these live porn shows, and he thinks he can, this is something that hasn't been done before or hasn't been done in this area. So he thinks he can make a lot of money really quick, and he can pay Kane back and fix everything. But little does he know, Kane has a brother who's like an inspector with the police department, and so he starts giving him shit too, following him around, busting him from place to place, and so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here from the beginning. And I will say this: one thing I liked about this movie is we get a large cast of characters here. It's called Life and Death of a Porno Gang. Well, it's actually a gang. There's like 10 of them or something, and but they're all friends, and you really start to enjoy these characters. I don't know. They are all very different, and they have their own reasons for doing what they're doing, being where they're at in this point in their life. He also meets a woman and falls in love with her. She's a porn actress who's starting to get older and doesn't really want to do porn anymore, but she's willing to try the porn theater thing because it does allow some artistic expression, and she's into that. She's a failed actress. So they fall in love while this is going on, also, to whatever extent that can happen. But things take another turn when Marco and they keep getting harassed by the police. They keep getting run out of different towns. Uh, After one instance, they are let out and into the woods, and we find out that this group of like Serbian hillbillies has been watching them from town to town and following them, and they corner them in the woods after they're released from the police station, and they like surround them with guns, and you think they're gonna kill everybody, but they don't. It becomes a hardcore sexual assault scene where everyone in the gang is assaulted. Everyone is raped. All the men, all the women, they're all raped in front of each other, and kind of like a giant, kind of like a, if you could imagine Last House on the Left, but times 10, it's like that. But they don't kill them. They steal their money, they rape them, and they go on. And so then they're all kind of like, this is the first moment where it kind of hits them that maybe this wasn't a good idea to go down this path. And there is some, like, you can actually kind of see it. There's some bad, just like the emotions that come forth. I mean, there's a lot of emotions that come forth with being sexually assaulted, but to be sexually assaulted in front of everyone that all your friends, and it's happened to all of them too, and everyone's ashamed and no one wants to talk to each other, and so it's a weird, it sets them out on this weird. I don't know. It starts, the more terrible things that happen to them, the more they start to accept that terrible things happen, and that becomes very dangerous for this group of people, because next we have a guy who shows up. He's an old guy. It's supposed to be a German journalist who's been traveling around, all of Eastern Europe watching these types of shows that Marco and them are doing. At first, he starts off very complimentary about how, he likes their shows and stuff like that. But really, what he's doing is setting them up. And he approaches Marco about snuff films. And he says that there is a market for underground snuff films. He has people that are willing to buy them, and he will pay him a large amount of money to do this. Well, initially Marco was like, "Nah, we're not doing that. What are you talking about? Killing people?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, killing people on camera, but it's not like you're kidnapping people and killing them on camera. These people are they need the money for some reason or another. A lot of them are terminally ill. Some of them have psychosis. They are people who approach me about the films. I don't go out and kidnap people for them." So he tries to justify it in that manner. And initially Marco tells him to go fuck himself. He's like, "No, we're not into that." But after this horrific rape that goes on, and they've had everything stolen from them. They're out in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. Everyone is starving. They're also drug addicts. A few of them are hardcore drug addicts, and they're starting to, get the shakes and the twitches and throw up and get sick. And so Marco, has like this group meeting. I mean, he makes it a group decision where he talks to all of them, and they decide that as long as it's people who want to be killed, they will do it. They will film it. They will, help with whatever needs to be done. And so we start down this horrible path of what happens next. First guy we meet is he's psychotic. He's suicidal. He shows up. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with him, and Marco's trying to tell him. He's like, "You realize you're going to be hurt. Like, this is not. I don't know what you think this is." He's trying to basically almost talk him out of it, right? And the guy is like, he pulls up his shirt. You see that he's cut himself hundreds of times already, and that he is suicidal, and he enjoys pain and things like that. And this guy pulls out a straight razor and on film and starts cutting himself up, and Marco and his buddies are filming it. And the next thing you know, he just takes the straight razor to his throat and cuts his own throat. But then he doesn't die right away. He's laying there gurgling and screaming, and they don't know what to do. And one of the guys flips out and just bashes his head in just to keep him from screaming. It's pretty traumatic. And then, that's the way this film goes. One act leads to another act, and it makes the next act more justifiable in their in their mind. The next guy we meet is an ex-soldier who has committed some atrocious acts, and he admits to that. He also tells us that he has terminal cancer. He's dying, and he feels like it's some kind of you know, a punishment for things he did in war. He killed civilians. He saw horrible things. He talks about some of that during his interview when he's talking to Marco before this starts. And he is, he's willing to be killed for money. He wants the money sent to a certain person, and they abide. In this segment, one of the other girls in the troop named Sonia, her and her husband are part of the gang, and they joined, they were porn, they'd done porn before, and they needed to make money for their kids, and who they've left with, family members to go on this trip, and they're not bad people. It's just a fucked up world. It's a fucked up situation, and she has to participate in this one because they try to do it as a film, and she ends up, having to actually be the one that kills this guy, and you see that it kind of breaks her mentally that she didn't want to do this. This goes on, and they get to a point where they need to do a film. There's no one offering to do it. This old man, who is a relative of one of them, they're all having like a cookout in the woods, and he shows up, and it's all, family reunion stuff and all that. Great. But then he tells them about this pedophile guy who lives in town. I believe it's a pedophile. He's a criminal. He lives in town and who got off scot-free for something horrible he did. So they go into town, they find this guy, they kidnap him, and there is an insane scene here because they don't feel any guilt about what they do to this guy. And I don't want to spoil it. This was a good one. This one is a really good one. But while all this is going on, the police show back up. They've been, following them around the countryside, and they kind of bust them in the middle of it almost, and they take off running as soon as they're done with what they're doing. But the police shoot at them. There's, a lot of shooting in the dark and stuff like that. And here we see one of our members of the gang gets killed. He bleeds out in the truck. It's pretty sad, and he was one of the members of this gang that was important to everyone. And so this has a traumatic effect on everybody. And then we see, this is what starts to happen. They start to get picked off one by one, but it's not necessarily people who are killing them. There's a couple suicides, people who just can't take what's going on anymore. It's really sad. I mean, it's very, very depressing and sad. And then we get to a point where everyone is just, there's been 3 or 4 deaths. Everyone that's left is like, I can't do this anymore. And so they all decide to go back to Belgrade, where they live for another 6 months or something without talking to each other at all or seeing each other. And then there's a violent accident. A couple of the guys from the gang and one of the girls are out drinking because they're still trying to quell these feelings that they have, and they have a horrible accident where she drives off a bridge and it kills all 3 of them she did it by accident, but she was drunk out of her mind. And we find in this the pictures of their kids, and it's pretty, like, I feel like the end here is a bit rushed. The film is like 2 hours long. It's over 2 hours long. Even with that, though, I felt like the end, they should have added maybe another 20 to 30 minutes to this film, because it seems like they rushed through some of this stuff at the end to get to the final part of this movie, and that is where Marco is just, you feel like through a lot of this movie that none of this is affecting him. It's affecting everyone else, but it's not affecting him because he keeps trying to justify it. And, of course, him and the girlfriend, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, Una or something like that. They break up because she tells him that he's a loser. He's, the things he's doing are wrong. He doesn't want to hear that. And so they break up, and they're not talking to each other either. And we get to a point where he realizes that this guy, Kane, is still looking for him. And his brother, the inspector, they're still looking for him, and they're going to start trying to take out their frustrations of him on his friends that are still alive, the few that are still alive. And so Marco comes up with a plan to end this. And so here at the end, I don't want to give it away. I thought the end was, at first when I was watching it, I thought it was very unsatisfying. I thought it was rushed to the end to make a point that I didn't necessarily want to see that. But that doesn't always matter, right? We're just the audience. We're not the artist that makes the film. And the more I thought about it, the more I understood it. It was ultimately that nobody went untouched by what happened. The things they did uh, culminated in the demise of all of them to some extent. And I think if you want to know how this movie ends, you should definitely go watch it. It's depressing, it's dark, it's sad. It has moments where it's funny. It has moments where it's utterly disgusting. There's a guy in this film who's you have a lot of sympathy for him. He's a transsexual character who's, you can tell, has had a very hard life, but he's also got some kind of thing about bestiality where he's I don't know, somebody made him do something, or he decided to do something when he was very young with an animal, and he fell in love with that animal and loved it, and then they killed the animal when they found out what was going on. And so he still has this kind of like, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a perversion. There's just some things out there like that are perversions, guys. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not one of those people. I can't normalize pedophilia. I can't normalize bestiality, that kind of stuff. No, there are some things that are kinky that I don't understand, but I'm totally fine with people doing it. And then there are some things that I'm just like, that's utterly disgusting in my opinion. Like, I can't deal with that on as far as normalizing it, saying it's okay. No, fuck no. And so, yeah, that guy, it's hard because you have a lot of sympathy for the character. You're like, I like this guy, but what the fuck are you doing, man? Or woman, or whatever. I don't know. Like, he didn't seem to care what they called him as far as how he identified or whatever. But, yeah, guys, I'm going to give this film, I'm going to give it 7.5 out of 10. I liked it a lot. I think, honestly, it's weird because it's like right on the border. It's an extreme shock film. There's extreme shocking scenes in the movie, several, to be honest. But it's also like a very good dramatic story, and I didn't expect that going into this. I thought it was going to be some schlocky 2-hour movie with a bunch of terrible imagery, and that it was going to end up being, for every one of these movies I talk about, guys, I've probably seen 10 more that I just decided that it wasn't worth talking about, right? But this one really surprised me. It caught me off guard with how good it was dramatically, and the performances are excellent. I even think that the filmmaker here is excellent, and I can't. I'm having trouble finding a listing for who made this film. I'm having trouble finding anything anywhere that tells me who directed this film, and I've looked a couple different places. I mean, you would think it would be like right there on the cover, but it's not. I mean, I don't know who actually directed this, and I have looked. I wanted to know, but because I wanted to see if they had anything else, but I couldn't find it, and I'm sure it is out there somewhere. So I'm going to keep looking, and maybe one of you guys know. Maybe one of you guys have an idea. So it got really bad critical reception. A lot of people said that. One of the reviews warned viewers that the imagery was repulsive and horrifying. It never threatens to overwhelm the audience with intelligence, artistry, or humanity. Film school rejects panned it. They said the director made a scatterbrained film that fails to string together any coherent narrative outside of getting the audience from one distressing image to the next. Absolute bullshit. Absolute fucking utter bullshit. This film has a consistent narrative, a story that starts one way, ends another way, and has several character arcs in it. If you didn't get this movie, to me, if you didn't get this, you're a fucking moron. And I'm saying that to you, Film School Rejects. That's going from Jay versus Horror to Film School Rejects. If you're putting out reviews like this, you're shitty. I think we need to have reviewers for the reviewers, right? Because this review alone, because Film School Rejects is a pretty popular site, this review alone may have kept 20, 30, 40 people from seeing this. And I'm not sure what review I read back when the film came out that probably pushed me away from wanting to see it. But it's totally it's bullshit. This film definitely has a succinct narrative. It even has a timeline. There's a very clear timeline put forth from early 2000 to mid 2002 of how this story goes. And how could you say that there's no, it's, for these type of films, it's got one of the strongest narratives I've ever seen, to be honest with you. and a great deal of characters, and they all have character arcs. I will say I felt like some of it was rushed, but they were trying to get to a certain point to make a certain statement by the end of the film. Of course, because like the first half of the film, not a lot of this is going on. It's just weird porno stuff, right? But then when everything starts to turn bad, is when we see more and more of the story. Whoever wrote that review, like I pity you. I actually truly have pity for you that you are so unintelligent that you could not see the narrative in this film. You need to go to film school because you are absolutely a reject. Guys, that's my opinion. That's all it ever is, right? And next time we will be doing. I have to get through. I really need to rewatch Blood, Bouquet of Blood and Guts again from the American Guinea Pigs. Bloodshot I've seen recently, and Song of Solomon I rewatched recently, and I just rewatched Sacrifice last night, which, by the way, blew my mind. I must have fell asleep during that movie because I didn't see the ending. I don't remember the ending of that movie. I thought it was just like an hour-long torture movie, but it's not. There is like a coherent ending to the film to some extent. So I was kind of happy to rewatch that, and that really pushed me to say, hey, just because you've seen these movies in the last couple of years, go ahead and rewatch them again, Jay, and that way you have a really good, clear view of what's going on here. Because a lot of times you take a first look at something and you're like, this is crap. Then you take a second look at it and you're like, okay, well, I see what they were going for. Then you take a third look at it and you're like, oh, okay, well, I get it. Maybe it's not great, but I get it. And that's kind of what happens. I think you have to give everything at least one look, right? And so I want to make sure I have a good, clear view of all four of those movies before we talk about them. But that is what we will be talking about next, hopefully, as long as I'm able to get through those tonight or the next day. And guys, when will we talk to you again? Well, we'll talk to you the next time. We've got something worth talking about. Bye.